Today, let's talk about something abstract, the nature of thought or thinking and the conservative controls on it. What does it take to control thought? And can it really be controlled? So let's talk about it. So the reason I started thinking about this is as I see the US government actions, especially Project 2025, and how Donald Trump and his ilk are trying to control the universities through financial pressuring. And this whole idea, like the Florida governor, we are going to kill woke. All of these attempts are meant to basically turn the tide of progressive thought and reinscribe it into a conservative mold, may it be economic, social, or political. So first thing that stands out is that in this so-called battle against thought itself, the very people who otherwise want less government and less intrusive government, who are for free market, used to be, want the government to intervene in controlling where individual and collective thought goes, which is kind of ironic. Thought, however, if you read any philosophers, is by nature progressive. Even if you go through Hegel, and I have my problems with Hegel, thought moves from known to unknown. That's how knowledge increases. We learn something, then we go and learn something else that we do not know about. So it's this Hegelian ego permanently in search of non-knowledge. Now, it's another story that it consumes it and makes it its own. But overall, if we live freely in the world, and if we think freely in the world, the nature of thought is that it is not regressive, it is progressive. It moves into the future. It imagines a different world. Know what restrains it on the right and on the left. So the only way thought can be controlled is through artificial means. So if you are on the right of the political spectrum or social spectrum, you will have built-in rules. This is what human beings can do. This is what they cannot do morally, ethically. Religion plays a role in it. It tells us, it pre-decides for us what is permissible and what is not. Politically, if you belong to a certain right-wing ideology, there are certain things you absolutely will not let your thought travel to. Care of the weak, maybe, care of the immigrants, because you've already decided what is permissible and what is not. But the same happens on the extreme left as well. Okay, so on the extreme left, if I turn around and try to do, let's say, cultural reading of a text or a situation, my Marxist friends will say, wow, this has got nothing to do with class. You're thinking in individual terms. Or if I even tend to say a little bit about, okay, let's compromise. Okay, let's have a little bit of market capitalism, but also some kind of socialism. So extremes on both sides tend to control thought or its relation to actions. But by its very nature, thought is progressive. And it moves into the future. It does go back into the past and may retrieve something, some usable knowledge, but its movement is progressive. Then in terms of the generational aspects of thought, the younger generations are always forward-looking. They might dwell on the past, but they're thinking of a world yet to come or want to be a part of it. So when the natural drift of thought is towards the future, towards more expansiveness, towards more progressive ways of living a life, then the state or the political parties or the religious groups constantly need to monitor it, to control it. And that means that wherever a government or a group of people try to control thought, they have to then automatically transform their culture into a policing culture, into an authoritarian culture. Now, let me give you an example from the American past. In the early debates of the Constitution, James Madison, in the Federalist Papers, writes about the creation of factions. So what his idea is that wherever human beings come together as a society, because of aligned interests of different groups, factions will be formed. And he sees factions as detrimental to democracy. And he speculates about two possible solutions to factions. One, in his view, is that the government make policies which absolutely forbid factions and controls them. But there is a dilemma there. If the government does that, then it's no longer a democracy, it is an autocratic system, and liberty will be destroyed in the process. The other solution that he gives and which prevails in the constitutional debates is to have a larger republic. So if we have a larger republic, he says, even when the factions emerge, which is a natural historical process, no one faction will be able to dominate enough to dictate its terms on the minority. I mean, that was his solution. It worked, but now it doesn't. But what I'm trying to hint at is the role of government in controlling thought and thought-related alliances. So if you look at current Trump policies, especially against the universities, so universities are being coerced into either teaching more conservative ideas or thoughts or trying to control the speech of their professors and their students. They have to concede, they have to agree, and they are being forced through coercive means, through withholding of federal funds. All of this needs a state mechanism, which seems disturbing, right? Colombia signed a deal with the federal government. The UC system is under pressure right now, right? That they will lose their federal grants if they don't make this a policy, right? The idea is to convert universities into conservative institutions. Now, left to their own devices, chances are that there will be conservative voices on universities. There always have been, but the natural flow of thought is progressive. So the only way you can make it regressive is through coercive means. So the entire strategy of Trump and, his ideological whatever advisors who want to turn the tide of progressivism, it depends on state power. And if it depends on state power in the United States, if the state is trying to turn the tide of thought itself, of the way we think the world, then there is a problem. And the problem is that since it is not natural to constrain thought like that, it depends on artificial means of coercion. So will these people be able to change what happens at universities or how people think, especially the young people? Maybe a few, but it's only going to last for as long as they have the power to coerce the progressive leaning thought itself and the institutions, if not back into the conservative fold, but rather, stymie their progress, it will last only for as long as they have the power to coerce. As soon as that power is diminished, as soon as, let's say, Trump and his followers and people who support his way of looking at the world are weakened, thought will then take over its natural function of being progressive, being expansive, and moving forward. So in the end, we can say that the only time thought, especially progressive thought, can be constrained is if there are artificial constraints to it. Religion, politics, state power can do that. Can do that maybe for a very long time. If you look at the countries where conservative groups are in power, Afghanistan, Iran, right? So constantly they have to keep people, especially young people, monitored and under control so that they can force them back into the conservative mode. The moment there is a little bit of space, young people and people who think about the world move progressively forward. So what that means is that without state coercion or religious coercion, thought cannot be constrained. It cannot be made conservative. Now, ideologically, yes. If you are a Catholic, if you're a practicing Muslim, maybe there are certain things you will not agree with, and you will try to live your life within the constraints of your religious ideology. It will be voluntary, but the only difference is you will not want to force others to live like you. So similarly, on the progressive side, then, a lesson that we ought to learn then is that, yes, we want to live a certain way. We want to view the world a certain way. But if someone doesn't agree with that, and if their stance is not harmful and egregious to people who are opposed to them, then we should turn around and say, okay, you have a right to live your own way. We are not going to deride you or laugh at you. We'll just keep doing what we do. The only difference is that on the progressive side, the coercion is not state-sponsored, right? Or institutionally sponsored. Universities, I served at too, never tell you that you have to be a progressive student to do well. No one says that, if you're not progressive enough, you can't be a graduate student, right? If you're a conservative student in the economics department, chances are you'll be able to work with conservative economists. So the way this administration is trying to control thought, deride progressivism, label it as anti-American, as anti-state, in my opinion, is not going to last long because it constantly needs that power of the state behind it. So I'm pretty hopeful. I was just reading today about what the Trump administration is doing to the UC system. And it literally looks like they are trying to force the universities into submission, right? By withholding federal funds and coercing them into signing agreements. The beauty of it is for the universities and for students and for progressive scholars and students is that as soon as that power is gone, that power of coercion is gone, thought and progressive thought would default onto its natural drift, which is towards the future, which is being more expansive. And no matter what these powers and people try, as long as, as Madison said, the state doesn't become a completely authoritarian state, chances of which are pretty rare, at least in United States as of now. We never know what the future holds. But overall, I thought I should kind of speculate a little bit about the nature of thought itself, which I believe, as per my reading, these are not my original ideas, that thought is by nature expansive and progressive. And to restrain it, you need artificial means of coercion, which presupposes that as soon as the means of coercion are weakened or erased, thought will default onto its natural drift, its natural flow. So let's stay positive. Let's keep being kind to each other, and let's keep thinking the future, a different future. And let's see where we end up despite what is being done and what keeps happening, and what the forces of state are trying to do against progressive thought. That's it. I hope this is useful to you. Let me know what you think, and I'll be happy to read your views and your comments. If you have a few moments, please do subscribe to the channel so that you get timely notifications of whenever I post something new. I'm deeply grateful for your support. Thank you, and as always, peace and love.